Welcome to Gaming Gaiden, everybody. This is the podcast that uncovers the side stories of the gaming world as well as the world of Japanese to English localization. I'm Andrew, and Mike currently has no power, so he might join us midway. But anyway, we have more EGM writers, everybody. We have Crispin Boyer.
Hello, how are you? I'm EGM's Crispin Boyer.
and Shawnimal Shawn Smith.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Good to see you or hear you.
Thanks for joining, guys. So this is awesome. So again, I grew up reading EGM every month as a kid. I'm 37 now. I'm almost 38. So I was like a kid of the 90s. I was, from like 9 to, I don't know, 8 to 15 or whatever. I was reading the magazine. This one I think is before your time, both of you, but I got this from this is number 58. I got this from eBay.
Are you on the cover for Street Fighter for Super Nintendo?
Yeah. So Mike and I are huge fighting game fans, so I had to kind of rebuy this one. So, yeah, man. As I looked through it, I was like, of course I loved this. Everything about this is great. This is the perfect magazine.
Well, I think in a lot of ways, Crispin and I also grew up at EGM.
Oh, you did? That's awesome. All right, so let's start it off. How did you get started at EGM? Let's start with Crispin.
Well, Shawn actually started before me, so
okay.
But no, I'll take the lead and save Shawn's story because it's a better story. But it was I think it was at a time during EGM's history when they were looking to bring in some fresh blood, some new writers, and I was a reporter fresh out of college, but a huge fan of EGM, and I was covering county commissioner meetings and police beat and health department for a small newspaper in North Carolina. I went to a meeting for the health department, which is the exciting life of a reporter. You go to a lot of meetings, sit there and take notes and get some story out of it. The meeting started late, so I had some time to kill. So I walked across the street to the grocery store, saw the new EGM. I'd been a fan of EGM. I had a subscription all through college, and I'm like, you know what? I'll pick this up and read it past the time until the meeting starts. I got to the end of the magazine and saw that they were looking for writers. And I was like, oh, gosh, that'd be a dream to work. Because I always wanted to work in just magazine journalism in general. So I went home that night after the exciting health department meeting where I think they might have passed something related to like teen pregnancy in education, maybe. I can send that to you later.
Okay. Okay.
But so, yeah, I sent in my resume. And the guy that hired me, the same guy I think that might have hired Shawn, a guy named Joe Funk, he immediately replied, and this was at the dawn of email, really. This was 1996, like early 1996.
Yeah.
So he got back to me and said, send me like some writing samples, some sample reviews. And so I was like, okay. So I went and rented some games from Blockbuster. I wrote a review of Descent for the PlayStation.
Oh, nice.
Put that in. Joe liked it, said, we want to fly you out for an interview. This all happened. It was like a whirlwind romance, but I was like on cloud nine because honestly, this might be a shock to your listeners, but small town newspaper journalism is not all it's cracked up to be. I think
It's fine. I'm glad someone's finally
blowing the lid off it.
Brave, very brave.
So I came out and I interviewed and I met Shawn and Dan Shu, very briefly. I don't even know if I got to meet you, Shawn, in that first interview. I might have only met Shu. It was like super fast.
Yeah, it was. And I don't recall. I just remember Shu and I being like, who's this guy coming in? He's like, it's flown in and he comes in a limo. Fancy man.
That is true. They did have a limo. And I think I did wear a blazer and some nice khakis, some pleated slacks. And they offered me the job, and I had like an hour to find an apartment. So I went out and quickly found an apartment and left and put in my 2 weeks notice at the newspaper. And then a month later, I was at EGM and got to meet the Shu and Shawn. And that's pretty much it. That was my entrance into game journalism, which is, it's pretty hard, especially then a hard field to get into. There's probably more astronauts than there were game journalists at that particular time in history. So I felt really, really lucky and really excited. And just from there, it was just like getting to hang out with Shawn and Shu. Like basically, we got to be closer than brothers. And like, Shawn and I lived together, and it was like such a fun, long, crazy, like deadline nights and stuff. But that's how I got into it.
You moved from North Carolina to Chicago for the job, or Chicago suburb.
Yeah, okay. And I was very happy to do that.
Okay, that's cool. There's limited run games is in North Carolina now. Maybe North Carolina's getting.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
bigger than it used to be.
Raleigh, maybe. I saw something that said that North Carolina was the 4th fastest growing state, actually. So I don't know.
Honestly, it is a beautiful place. Where I went to school was up in the Appalachian Mountains, and I don't mean to like take a dump on North Carolina. maybe just the place I lived, which was kind of a rundown. It was for the furniture industry, and that had kind of moved away. So that particular place I lived wasn't great. But yeah, no, Raleigh and Winston-Salem and the Appalachian Mountains are all beautiful.
Okay, awesome.
All right, Shawn, how did you get started at EGM?
Yeah, so I was a fresh like I was a very young man, and I had studied journalism in high school, and I kind of dabbled with it after that. I went to junior college, and I was studying art actually, and like around that time, like I was barely out of high school basically. And I had heard through like a friend of a third cousin that EGM was looking for folks, and I loved EGM. I loved video games. I really at the time especially, like I was really into writing, and I basically, my dad had to drive me. I had no idea where I was going. Like I was in a small town. It was like a suburb of Chicago. It's like an hour plus outside of Chicago. And I just didn't know where the hell Lombard was at the time. So my dad actually drove me. I was just a kid, and drove me to the interview. I had my interview. I don't know where my dad went. I maybe grabbed a beer or went to the mall. I don't know. I had my interview. It went well enough with Joe Funk, and I had writing samples. Like I knew how to write. I was no Crispin, but I could hold my own. But actually, this was years before Crispin and Shu were there. This was actually just for like a kind of like almost like a pseudo intern, like a paid internship, essentially. Definitely part-time. I was kind of filling in where needed. In some cases, I was ghostwriting for other reviewers, like, common practice, I think, at least for some magazines. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But in any case, I actually started working for their website. I was doing a couple things for EGM, but then I started working for nuke.com, which is a terrible name. But I think eventually Nuke became, like through a lot of different channels, 1UP, essentially. Right. But that was years after I worked there. So the shorter version is that they actually laid me off. They kind of like shifted their focus. They were, I don't know if somebody bought nuke.com or whatever happened. And then around that time, Joe Funk, I was working, I got my old job back, and that was at Babbage's Software. So if you remember Babbage's Software back.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So I had been working there prior to this part-time gig at EGM. And when I got laid off, I was just like, well, I guess I'll just go work at the software store. So it's like, I had no aspirations to go try to find a job anywhere else, apparently. So I just went back to Babbage's, which was great. And then Joe Funk literally came into the store, like into Babbage's, because he knew where I worked. And he came in and he was like, hey, so we're kind of getting some new people in there, and I'd love for you to come in if you're up for it and talk about this review crew position. And like, I didn't quit on the spot, but I basically was just like, 1 second. And I was like, my manager the guy was Jeff Gardner, who I traded a 3DO for a synthesizer.
Oh my God.
They didn't even have 3DOs in Alabama at the time when I was living there. I used to read about it in the magazine. I was like, where are the TurboGrafx's? Where are the 3DOs, the Jaguars? I've never seen one in person. Those never made it to Alabama, I feel like.
That's a bummer. There's some gems on all those systems. But a long story short, that was it. Like I basically gave my notice, and I started at EGM shortly thereafter with Shu, and then lucky enough to meet Crispin, and we all, like Crispin said, like best buds and then some, and just like long awesome nights and ridiculous trips and so many games, and really just like the best times. I mean, like I really have no negative memories of that time at all. I mean, a couple weird ones, but not really negative.
There's definitely some weird ones. Yeah, it's funny, the Babbage's connection, because I also worked at Babbage's, like in the late '80s. The nice thing about Babbage's is you could take games home and try them out, which was a huge perk of working there. And then that's one of the things about EGM that trumped Babbage's, is you could pretty much, there was this game closet that had every game ever made, plus a lot of games that were never released. So it definitely one-upped Babbage's in terms of the games you could take home and play and stuff.
Well, definitely, yeah. I feel like working at a magazine is just a whole other level, especially at that time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys have to
totally beat the game just to write like 4 sentences for the review crew section?
Crispin, you want to take this one?
Well, in an ideal world, yes, you would beat the game. And so for a long time, EGM, the reviews were, the review crew had the 4 little text boxes. And ideally, you would play the game through to completion. But during the holiday issues, they would get in so many games. It would be like 40 games in a month. At first it was, we reviewed all the games. Like Shawn and I would review everything, and sushi-x. Then they started to hire new writers, and we would get freelancers who would mix into the review crew. So then we didn't have to play and review every game. And then it got to the point where there would be a large review, a bigger text box, and then 2 or 3 smaller reviews. So it was definitely, whoever wrote the large review would beat the game to completion. The other ones, it wasn't quite as important, but it just got down to laws of physics and time. It's just impossible to play every game to completion. I will say that I've certainly, like working at EGM, I worked there 12 years. I've probably completed like over 10,000 video games.
Oh my God.
It's just ridiculous. Yeah, when you like, I've never done that math, but yeah, it's. I mean, Crispin worked there longer than I did, but it's absolutely true. And I think while we did finish a ton of games, I think there was also a time where it's like, some games, as we've all played, are like really wonderful, right? But you could play a few levels and understand, like, okay, this is what the game is. And we're not talking about like epic, RPGs or mind-blowing cinematic experiences like they have now, but this is like a little different back in the day, and we could tell pretty quickly, especially after a while with our expertise and experience, like, okay, yeah, this game is sadly a turd.
I wonder how
you have to play like a grab by the goalies to completion to really capture the nuance of that game. But then, something like a Metal Gear Solid comes in whenever those games, something like that, or Halo or any of the Grand Theft Auto games, they're so captivating that you sit there and you no matter where you're at in the review process, you play the entire thing through. But I think that's also like that's kind of why the review crew system evolved, where there would be like a featured reviewer, and then smaller reviewers that were kind of like a backup opinion, like a second, third, and fourth opinion, or why we added more reviewers to the whole process, because it's impossible. Because not only do we review the games, but we wrote a lot of the magazine. We wrote a lot of the previews. We had dedicated people that would do tips and tricks and strategy back at the beginning. Right. We had sports people, which is good because it's hard to find someone who likes every type of genre.
Yeah, we definitely all had our leanings, genre wise. Like I was definitely more action, adventure, platformer, occasional racing game, but I was definitely not. I mean, I could play sports games. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I could play them.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Yeah,
I was the Japanese flight simulator expert, so that was my beat.
Crispin, I mean, okay, we didn't review any PC games but Crispin was like, you know, I don't know. Is this what is this? Is this rated PG-13?
No, we can swear. Don't worry.
Okay, I was just saying, Crispin was like balls deep in flight sims. Like he had all the, you know, if curved monitors existed back then and those seats like with the springs.
Oh yeah,
you would have been so into it.
I would have been like strapped to a chair now and probably 4,000 pounds and fed by IV. So maybe it's good that doesn't exist now, because I look at these VR setups. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And you know, I saw that you were talking, like one of your kind of pre-show questions was about gaming in the 90s. And that was part of it, was like, you know, that was kind of the rise of PC gaming. It was that's whenever we transitioned from the Genesis and Super Nintendo to the PlayStation and CD games. There was a lot of like exciting stuff happening at the time. My first review was a Genesis game. And Shawn, I'm sure you remember, was like Lobo for the Genesis.
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
Lobo. It's a great comic.
Was that released?
I don't think so.
Right? I think that's an unreleased game.
That was we have so many copies of that. No, I'm just kidding. I wish that'd be amazing. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff that there are definitely games that I don't ask me which ones, because I don't remember, but there's definitely games we played and we were like ready to do it, you know, write whatever, and then like, oh no, that's not coming out now, it was something like drastically was changed on it or whatever.
Right.
Well, the lead time for the magazine was like 2 months, so it was kind of hard to get a finished reviewable version and not still be timely. I mean, that's one of the benefits now of online gaming journalism, is everything's instant. But back then it was like everything was a moving target. So, you know, these games are coming out in 2 months, so we have to try and get the reviewable, the beta versions, whatever was ready to review now. And that was always a big challenge too. And then, things might change and you might have to pull something at the last minute and then throw together some preview of something else to fill in the space.
Yeah, absolutely.
To me, with the 90s gaming, it feels like, I mean, you started in 1990 with NES, and in 2000 we're at PS2 already, right? So that the main time I'm growing up, I'm just seeing essentially the dawn of video games, really. I mean, I know in earnest it's in the 80s with Atari and everything, but I don't know. It just seems like, maybe it's just because that was my childhood or something. It just seems like there was something special about that time. And people talk about this now. I was at EGM one year, and at EGM, I was at E3 one year, and one guy was like, he told me, it's not like the old days. All the new systems look the same as the last system. And at the time, I didn't like him saying that, but it does sometimes feel a little true. Like PS4 and 5 are different, but not as much as like Super Nintendo was to PS1 or something. Like we were seeing big jumps the whole way through.
Yeah, I mean, it is all relative. I mean, there's always going to be games, like, especially for, I mean, I think one of the big ones for me in terms of those formative gaming experiences is that jump when you saw, like, you know, rotation and scaling on Genesis, and even more so on Super Nintendo, and some of the stuff that they were doing with like Star Fox, that was just like at the time just completely mind blowing. Like how is this possible? You know, or even some of the Mario games, you know, that, you know, where there'd be such intense like scaling and rotation of characters coming at you and flying all over the place, and all of a sudden, and I think what that speaks to ultimately is like all of a sudden games became more immersive visually, and I think what then happened with some of the 32-bit systems is that, you know, the stories started coming up with it. You know, it's like it didn't just look good. Like, there's great stories, don't get me wrong, but reading them via text on the screen is very different than hearing them voiced by actors who are actually pretty damn good.
Oh, right. Yeah, except for that first Resident Evil game. Well, that's good in a different way. Some of the best voice acting ever.
There was a really good one that I loved at, oh my gosh. It might have been, I'm probably forgetting, but it was definitely TurboGrafx. It might have been TurboGrafx CD since it had voice, but it might have been like Lord.
Oh yeah, I think
or something.
It's like, I think it's, I know what you're talking about. Is it the one where they mispronounce the word stingy?
Yes,
they call it
that's
stingy?
exactly it. Yeah, no one's going to like you, Steve, if you're too stingy. And at the time, my friends and I were just like, what in the hell does that mean? Like, we're trying to like unpack, like, what does this mean? We never like for a moment thought just simply lost in translation.
Was it a Japanese person saying stingy, or was it an American person that read it wrong?
Well, as far as we know, it was an American actor, but it was very much a Japanese game. So we don't know if they hired a Japanese actor or voiceover actor that maybe spoke English well enough to, or if it was maybe a European actor in Japan that, could do an American accent or something. Who knows? But it was amazing.
There was a lack of quality control is, I think, the problem.
Yes.
Someone didn't listen back to that and say, like, you know what, let's re-record that line and try it a different way where you say it as stingy. Let's see how that works.
Yeah. You're the best voiceover actor we could afford with the budget we were allocated.
Yeah. You're an intern at our company and you can talk, so...
Yeah.
You can't read very well, but you can talk. So.
You can talk, so we're going to record that voice.
But at the time, we were amazed to hear recorded voice and music in games. So we're like, yes, they're talking. They're saying things.
It was incredible.
Like a talking movie back in the day.
Yes, that's true.
Oh man, yeah, I never had TurboGrafx whatsoever. I play the emulators now, which are great, but that was, I didn't even know anybody that owned one. They had no, like I said, Jaguar CD 3DO. They just weren't around, but I'd seen them in the magazines. By the way, Resident Evil, real quick, EGM trivia. Resident Evil and Tomb Raider came out the same month, right? Is that the only time there were 2 games of the month at the same issue? I remember this when I was a kid. I was like, two games of the month, 1 issue?
Crispin was our resident Tomb Raider expert.
Yeah, and I would have, so I remember I got there after Tomb Raider 1. I was big into Tomb Raider 2.
Okay.
There has to be, I feel like there's been another game that tied for game of the month, but it would have had to have been like, something big. Like I'd have to go back and somewhere on my computer, I have a database that's got all of the EGM reviews. I took, whenever I left the magazine in 2008, I was like taking all this proprietary information, stealing it, throwing it onto a thumb drive and getting it out of there. So I can consult
whistleblowers just in case.
Ziff Davis whistleblower.
If anything happens to me, it's going into the mail and it's coming to you, Shawn. So do what you got to do if you get that envelope.
Oh man, yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, when we started, like a big deal was like parallax scrolling, like a horizon with multiple layers in the background. And then we also started right when the Nintendo 64 came out, and that was kind of that was Nintendo sticking with cartridges. But then they had like these really awesome first party games, like, Super Mario 64 or when the Zelda game came out. But then they had a lot of terrible crap on that system. So it was weird. We would also review the systems. We were kind of in we were in a magazine sweatshop, basically. We put out the monthly magazine, and then they would have us put out all these specials. So we put out the annual holiday buyer's guide. And then we put out all these other little specials like summer gaming guides, Street Fighter gaming guides. Yeah. We're on the hook for a lot of work, but that was part of the deal. It was a fun job. We would work there late. At that time, we didn't really have families or anything. Although Shu, I think, was married like right when he started.
That's right.
But
okay.
But yeah, it was, and we were fine with it. I mean, it was just a really fun environment.
Yeah, it was like. I mean, yeah, we really were like, we're young adults, but we're like, in a lot of ways, we're just like kids having a blast, playing every game imaginable, bunch of games that we wish before we worked there, it'd be like truly a dream come true to be able to play games in advance, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, holy shit. Like here it is. Like we're getting every game that isn't coming out for 6 months to a year. In some cases, even longer. And we're playing preview versions. Or, I mean, in some cases, like flying us out to, play something somewhere because they're not really willing to send it because of piracy or whatever.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And, flying us to exotic locales to just play the game.
What was EGM's connection to Japan like at all at this time? Was there much of one, or did you get a bunch of Japanese imports in sometimes, or?
It was I'll speak because I think Shawn, when I first started, really the only people that would go to Japan for EGM was Ed Semrad, who was the editor-in-chief at the time, and he would go to Japan with like maybe some other trusted staffers because I feel like Ed Semrad didn't really like us, so he'd go to Japan. He would pick up all of this, like he'd get all this footage of the games. He'd bring back all of this material, like PR material for the games. He'd go to like different Japanese gaming shows, Tokyo Gaming Show, things like that. Then he'd come back, drop them off on our desk, like basically just my desk, Shawn's desk, and say, "All right, here it is. Here's our Japan coverage. Put this together." So then I remember there would be
no context, by the way, no context.
No, it'd just be like a big pile of Japanese material, booklets, leaflets, brochures in Japanese, and then a videotape of hours and hours of footage that we would have to correlate with these brochures.
It's students carrying. I mean, granted, the technology wasn't sophisticated; it was literally tapes. But at the same time, yeah, I remember seeing these videos, and it's like it's not great footage, and often we're like. Like best case scenario, they're able to like literally plug an input into or output from the TV into the camcorder. But a lot of the times they wouldn't allow that. So they're just like in front of the TV as still as they could possibly be. And then we take screen captures from that video, which we deinterlace and do other random stuff in Photoshop to put into the magazine.
And it might just be a logo. It might just be
yeah, it's true. It's not gameplay. It's just a logo.
Okay.
So we would sit there and try and figure out what the hell we're looking at. Okay, this game's from this series. This is from this series. Let's, fortunately, we put these into these Japanese roundup sections in the magazine, Japanese previews, where the text would maybe be 30 words at most. Mm-hmm. But you'd have to write like, dozens of them. So we would sit there and honestly, we'd get kind of punch drunk late at night writing these little blurbs about these games. We had no idea what we were talking about. And then that was one of the things that got overhauled. We hired dedicated Japanese reporters, and we had people on the staff who were really very knowledgeable in Japanese, could also speak Japanese. So they would go and cover these shows, and our coverage got a lot better. But that was like a huge part of the draw of the magazine was coverage of even I'm sure people were just happy to see like a screenshot of the logo and hear our kind of music.
Yeah. There were times when it'd be some big name game that we knew was eventually going to make it over to the States. So we were like legit stoked sometimes to see some screen captures or a little bit of video of some game that's not going to be coming out to the States for a long time, even if we didn't know exactly what was going on.
Right. Okay.
And that'd be too like the first time you'd see Super Mario 64 or Zelda Majora's Mask or something like that would be at these Japanese shows, because Nintendo was they were notoriously secretive about what they would show. So and you could ask when I started, a third-party liaison, a guy on our staff whose whole job was to contact all of the game publishers and request assets. And I think ultimately that became kind of a wag the dog situation, and we would cover what he got. So we would just be at the whims of the game companies. And that, that drove a lot of what was in game magazines back then. But, it's kind of like we can't, if we can't break into Nintendo and like steal this footage or play these games. So.
Okay. I always wondered how close the connection was with Japan, because it's pretty well known that the review crew section in general was kind of taken from Famitsu Weekly, right? At least design wise, general idea of it, right? And Sushi-x even
from Famitsu Weekly. So.
Oh yeah.
Taco X's American counterpart.
Yes.
Oh man, yeah. I actually finally did get a few Famitsu Weeklies as well for my collection. Yeah, it's like, this is a Japanese EGM, man.
It does. I mean, the format works, So
yeah.
It definitely made a lot of sense, even if it was a bit of a inspiration.
Yes, that's fine. Do you remember your first game you reviewed, Shawn?
I do, because when he said Genesis, I was like, oh yeah, I remember mine. Lufia 2: Rise of the Sinistrals for Super Nintendo.
Okay. I don't think I've played that one.
Lufia was. I think there actually was maybe it came out for Switch or something. Like they did. I don't think it was a new game, but I think it was a port of an older one. And it's a great little RPG. I didn't even have a byline for that one. I think I did it for one of the other reviewers, like Scott Augustin or
okay,
other folks that were in the review crew at the time. But yeah, it started with Super Nintendo, and then I worked at EGM full time through PS2, I believe, like the start of PS2, and then I did freelance after that.
Okay.
Were either you like the RPG guy? Was there a dedicated RPG guy? I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, I was definitely one of the RPG guys. We had others that were especially more into the Japanese RPGs.
Yeah.
I would say I was like probably the second tier RPG guy. I actually really liked when Final Fantasy VII came out, that was a huge deal. But we had people on staff that were kind of the Japanese experts, and they would play through the Japanese version before the American version even came out. So they were like already pretty well versed in it.
To John and Mark, those folks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So and you might know John Riccardi and Mark McDonald from the magazine, but they also do Japanese to English localization and then vice versa.
Oh yeah,
I've applied to them before. I have been to Hanami. I lived in Japan for 3 years. Hanami is, I don't know if you know, but it's whenever you go watch the sakura bloom and fall and everybody gets drunk under it. It's funny. The Western perception is the sakura, image of Japan, the cherry blossom. Meanwhile, what they do in Japan is get fucking wasted under it for a fucking week. That's how they celebrate it.
I've been to that, and there's a lot of tarps involved. You put a lot of tarps under the.
A lot of tarps. It's like a little camping kind of thing. But I don't know if it was John Riccardi, but somebody from 8.4 was there. And I remember talking about sushi-x even then, but I lived there from 06 to 09 right after college. So.
Oh, that's amazing.
Well, I was there. I worked for 8.4 for a while, and I was there in like 09 at Haname. So maybe I talked to you about sushi.
That would be insane. Kichijoji? Was it in the town Kichijoji?
No.
Okay.
No, this was just in this is in Tokyo.
Kichijoji's in Tokyo. Well, a little bit.
Well, then apparently I don't know where I was.
Basically Tokyo. Yeah. It's on the west side near Shinjuku, I believe.
Then it might have been that was me.
Okay, that'd be weird if that's true.
Yeah, you probably didn't recognize him because he was wearing a baby doll dress and
had a blazer.
Yeah, Shawn knows.
Had a blazer. Yes.
I went there with John and Mark, and they just kind of took me around. I let them lead me around, and I worked for 8.4 right after EGM and helped with editing of localization for a while, and that was like a really good experience, a lot of fun. Worked on
That's awesome.
Monster Hunter Tri, some Dragon's Dogma. I worked on a Dragon's Quest game. It's all such a blur now. I worked on
so many games.
I worked on a game called Kitty Collector, and that was fun. I worked on a game called Imagine Makeup, a makeup game for preteen girls, and that was a good experience. I was obviously the best person to work on that.
Sense,
so.
Yeah.
Were there any games that, this is off the cuff question right now, but were there any games that like the first 15 hours really sucked, but then it was like, wow, this is fucking incredible. Like, what happened? Does any game like get markedly a lot better kind of late in the game?
Geez, I'm trying to think. I mean, there was a game, so Dead Rising from Capcom for the PlayStation. That was a game that in general, I did not enjoy the experience. But when I got to the end and beat it, I was like, you know what? This is the best terrible game I've ever played. It was like so frustrating. The first game had this really terrible save system where I think if you died, you had to go way back or you had to do something special to like not have to basically restart the game. So yeah, I remember that one being like, I hate this game, and I still gave it like an 8 because actually in the end I love that game.
There was a game for N64 called Body Harvest.
Okay, yeah.
And and I remember like starting that game, and I was just like, I'm like wandering around this like polygonal alien landscape. I don't exactly know what the hell I'm doing. And I mean, I guess, games you start playing, you start understanding the play mechanic, like, even if it doesn't have a good tutorial, at some point you hopefully pick it up. But then I really started really started getting into that game, really enjoying what was going on. It was still a bit maybe a little too open-ended,
wasn't it by, am I thinking of the right game? Was it by Rockstar or DMA, the guys that made? Yeah, it was really good. I remember that game.
It was so that ended up being a precursor to Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
None of us knew that at the time, of course. But then and I certainly didn't know, but it ended up being a really great game. And I just kind of it just didn't seem like much when I first started playing it. And then years later, it was like, holy shit, that was essentially the first Grand Theft Auto, like an open world game on N64.
I have good memories of that game because, so this is part of the review process back then. You had to play these games on special systems called debugs. Okay. And sometimes these systems themselves were like large and unwieldy. They had extra parts, like extra gears and cogs and things, extra plugs. They'd overheat, but you couldn't just take them home and play them on your own system. So I remember that game in particular came in a Nintendo 64 debug, and those would have like actual padlocks on them.
The cartridge was like locked into the system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember I drove to my grandparents. My grandparents lived in Pennsylvania, so I drove from Chicago to visit my grandparents, and I had to review that game, and I brought it with me, this giant Nintendo 64 with padlocks and stuff on it, and sat up in their spare room and played it for like a week straight. But yeah, that game itself was kind of moody and weird.
Yeah.
Like a lot of N64 games. The graphics were just, it was like you were looking through Vaseline half the time. The textures were so muddy.
Yeah, even GoldenEye was it was like, holy shit, look at these polygons. But the textures were like 4-bit. Like just like
right.
blurry vibe.
I have an N64 hot take. I feel like if you take the N64 library and just put them into thumbs up, thumbs down, and then you do that with the Sega CD library, the Sega CD library might have more thumbs up games.
Oh yeah,
overall.
I would agree with you.
Right?
Yeah.
Because people remember all the good stuff from N64, which is incredible. But the rest, if it wasn't first party half the time, it was so bad.
And honestly, I would say the same for Sega Saturn. And certainly Dreamcast.
Oh, Sega Saturn was great.
We can all agree that Sewer Shark was definitely better than Blast Core.
Was there? It's just this is on the fringes of my memory. But did somebody take years to beat Sewer Shark or something?
I hope. Well, I kind of hope so, and I hope not.
Put it back and then went back to it. I don't know. Maybe somebody will comment.
They were sentenced to it by a judge. They committed some horrible crime, and some comedic sitcom style. You have to be this person's butler, and then you have to beat Sewer Shark.
It was like sentenced by Judge Judy.
Sewer Shark was my first Sega CD game, and man, that was not a good intro. But
oh man,
what's funny is oh juice! I can't remember the name. There was a game for the PlayStation that came out right at the beginning. It wasn't Twisted Metal. It was the other one. You were in a drop ship, a spaceship flying around.
Warhawk.
Yes.
Oh my god, memory. That was cool.
Yeah. But that was a game that I thought that game was amazing. But then it had these FMV, full motion video sequences that looked about as good as Sewer Shark. So they took the Sewer Shark video technology and applied it to an actually good game.
Yeah, I don't know what that compression algorithm was, but I feel like now there's filters in After Effects to recreate that look somehow.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, we were just happy to have video at all in games because we were just coming from SNES and all that. So yeah, huge step up at the time.
I do remember there was once in a while even the Game Boy Color would have some 3 seconds of video that would flash across the screen just to have a cut scene, which was amazing, and considering this what limited space they had on those little cartridges.
Right.
Batman and Robin for the game.com had very brief black and white FMV from the Joel Schumacher film.
Are you familiar with Game? Is it Gamecom or Game.com?
Oh, the game.com, that little system?
The horrible little system.
Yeah. I actually had it. Yeah, I had it. It was not good.
No, it was really bad. But the best part about it, the gift that system gave us, which Crispin can maybe, I don't know how, if it's late enough for you to make these noises in Hawaii. But Batman, it basically sounds like Batman is either having sex or he's just participating in some sort of sex. We don't know what.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up.
It plays a jaunty little 8-bit tune, like doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, and then there's Batman going, oh.
Like every time he punched, right? Or was when he got hit, or both.
It just kind of was random. There was no rhyme or reason to it.
And you guys, I feel like Crispin would go on the intercom at EGM and like do like a speaker, all the speaker phones would go, and he'd just like put that up to the speaker and it'd be in the entire office, just Batman.
Had to be after hours, or otherwise HR would not have.
Yeah. There was actual work being done in other places.
EGM was real serious during the day.
Oh yeah, real buttoned up blazers.
Blazers all the time.
Khakis.
I want an EGM blazer now.
We'll tear him off like Hulk Hogan.
That's awesome.
Did you guys ever review games for the Red Zone? Is that what it was called? That little stupid like Tiger VR thing?
You talking about?
Oh God.
That thing was terrible.
One. I remember the Virtual Boy. That
Virtual Boy was actually a legit system, but Red Zone was just it
was terrible.
Like
it was worse.
Bad idea.
Worse than game.com.
Wow.
Sounds like we need to go back and review that. Like there's an oversight. I have to look back through the.
It probably wasn't worth reviewing, really.
at the time.
I'm gonna be looking this up later. It's called Red Zone.
I think Red Zone.
Now, in Tiger's defense, they were a Chicago-based company. I think they ended up being bought out by some giant company, and they probably did all right when it was all said and done. But they also invented the Furby, which is amazing.
Oh wow! Well, they made a lot of money on that, I guess.
Yeah. Did they do Tamagotchi or no?
That was got to be Japanese.
That's Bandai or.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. One of those folks.
Got to get some of that Furby Tamagotchi money. Ding.
Did you guys ever work at EGM 2? Was there a lot of crossover there, or how did that work?
Not so
if anything, there was some rivalry, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Like low key rivalry. I don't really understand where that came from or why. I mean, I know who it came from, but like I don't really understand why it existed, because we literally like I don't know what the point of EGM2 was, other than just to have more coverage, basically more market share on magazine shelves and more gaming coverage. But yeah, there was like low key rivalry.
That's so
weird.
I
think part of it was the guys that worked in EGM2 used to work in EGM1, which was the flagship of Ziff Davis's video game empire. So they brought us in to work on EGM, and then those guys went to work in EGM2. So they felt a little resentful to us.
I forgot
we were brought in to replace them.
They felt like a downgrade, kind of?
Yeah.
Probably like a little bit of that. Yep. Although one of my dear friends, Phil Theobald, who I went to high school with and ended up recommending for a job at EGM2, and he ended up working there and has had a really rich career in gaming.
Okay.
I mean, to me as a reader, it felt like, well, this is my favorite game magazine, but it must be a lot of people's like top magazine because they got 2 now. GamePro doesn't have a GamePro 2. You know what I mean? This must be the most popular one. That was my thinking at the time. So I mean, I liked it, and like it definitely felt like it wasn't the flagship one, but the most memorable thing from it was trash talk.
Yeah, and maybe that's like their position, like a little bit of like what's the word? An antagonistic vibe.
That came from their rivalry with you guys.
It's just how they operated. I never really considered it. Like that's like, hey, like actually outside of work we could be friends, but at work, fuck you.
Okay.
Was it the same office?
Yeah. Oh yeah, same office. And whenever I started there, it was like almost like Lord of the Flies. Like I had to fight for cubicle space. My first desk. my first, and we had these like cheap ass cubicle desks that looked like they were made by Play School. They were plastic, They were like a kid's first desk
Yeah.
set.
Then they actually like snap together like that too.
Oh wow, my first office
kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I sat at my desk. It was right next to the door to the office,
Good God,
underneath
I
these
forgot
really
about that.
harsh fluorescent lights. So every time, like people would walk in all day, like going out for lunch or whatever. So I'd be sitting there. I even had to like scavenge up my own TV to for my
wow.
For that.
to use.
You really,
Yeah,
you really hobbled together. It was kind of like, you ever see the movie Castaway with Tom
Yeah.
Hanks?
Yeah.
Basically, he made it work. You know, Crispin was that way in a fully functioning magazine office, despite having, you know, it's not like we were devoid of resources. I think I don't know where they were going, but certainly they were going to new equipment for Crispin.
Oh man.
Well, Dan Shu was actually the expert. Like if we're all say in a refugee camp or in prison, he was the guy who would like get all the best stuff. I remember he managed to get like a couch that someone was going to throw away in the building, and he saw them about to throw it away, and he actually got Shawn and I to help him move it into his cubicle. And because the cubicles were so ramshackle, we were able to like extend his cubicle. And he had this giant cubicle in the middle of the office. It had like a couch, it had a fountain. It was amazing.
Was he like the Cyclops to your X-Men team? He's like the lead guy?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. He was
Okay.
Yeah, I would say he's like he was like I think Crispin had the most journalism experience and therefore was an actual writer. And I think Shu was a really good writer too, and I think he became even better over time. But he was like and I love people. I'm a people person and I'm an extrovert. But Shu just has this like way with people, and he always has. Sorry. I know you just interviewed him. He's still alive, thankfully.
Yeah.
He just this charisma, you know, that comes through. So I think you could just get stuff and he's fun. He's funny as hell. Like that dude is hilarious.
Awesome.
Well, yeah. Let's ask a bookend. What was the last game you interviewed for you reviewed for EGM?
Do you remember?
I left in 2008, so that would have been around the like Assassin's Creed
PS3 times.
Yeah. So it was probably something like that. Like I don't remember going out with any, you know, towards the end of I was reviewing less games because I was like the senior executive editor. So I was doing a lot of features and helping with that kind of content. I will say like the games I remember reviewing the most were kind of the ones that stood out to me were like when episode 1, the Star Wars episode 1 movie came out, before it turned out to be it didn't quite live up to expectations. We got to go and play, you know, the games for that movie. There was a pod racing game, and then there was a game based on the movie. And for me, that really stood out because I was like, wow, I'm getting a preview of these films. This is like 3 months before the movies came out.
Right.
It gets basically a preview of the movies before they came out. And so that was like a big deal because I was a huge Star Wars fan. And I was like, they're coming out with Star Wars prequels. It's going to be awesome. And then, you know, I went and played these games and it's like, oh, what's this Jar Jar crap? What is this stuff?
That was your first exposure to Jar Jar.
Yes, that's when I was exposed to Jar Jar.
Okay.
Yeah. Although the pod racing game was cool.
That was a really fun game. Yeah. I cannot for the life of me remember what my last game was. I wish I did, but so I ended around PS2 time. So I bet if I unpacked the sort of starting library of PS2 games, I could probably remember. But outside of that, I cannot for the life of me.
I think the game that I enjoyed the most playing was with Shawn was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
Oh yeah,
wow.
Which was like such a huge productivity killer because it had this mode in it called Horse, where you basically you do a move, you do a fancy skateboarding trick like a Frog Dog 360 or a Jesus Christ Superstar, one of those cool tricks that the skateboarders do.
Yeah,
like a Lenny Bruce on acid. I have no idea what these tricks are called.
I'm like, I want to do all of these. I want to learn skateboarding just to do these.
Like a Jamie Farr on acid. Anyway, so then, you know, you would go through it and then you'd either, then the other person that would go after you and have to beat the trick and then you'd have to match their trick, and then you would spell out horse if you. I can't remember if you won or lost. We would always change the word. You could change
spell
the
it
word
if you
horse.
lose. I think.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Because it would say you are a horse.
Yeah, you are a horse.
Yeah.
So that came from basketball, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But you can change the word. This is the best part. You could change the word to any word you want.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up skateboarding as well, and we used to call it skate. Play a game of skate, which is the same thing. You just spell out skate. So
that makes way more sense than what Crispin and I ultimately did, because we're a couple of juveniles. We played turd eat.
That's awesome.
I think mainly just so at the end of it would say you are a turd eat.
That's awesome.
But the story gets better. Crispin, you want to?
My friend named his Halo character Dog Humper, and we never got over that. Like Dog Humper killed you. You were killed by Dog Humper. All that Halo shit. It was just the best.
I'm assuming that's before Xbox Live, because they would have clamped down on that.
Yeah, this was Halo 1 days. Yeah, this is the local play.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we just called the mode Turdy, and we would just say, hey, let's take a minute and play some Turdy. We'd sit there, our cubicles were next to each other and like right across from each other. So we'd go over and play like an hour or so of Turdy. And then they came out with the game for the Dreamcast, and we were really close friends with the PR guy who was representing the company that was bringing out that game for the Dreamcast. And he had asked us, he knew we were big fans. He said, I want to make sure we do a good port. Is there anything we really need to pay attention to? And we said, oh yeah, make sure you got a really good version of Turdy in it.
Yeah, we
didn't explain what that was.
You got to have the turd eat mode. If you don't have it, I think it's gonna really like flop.
Absolutely essential.
And he's a real sweet guy, like really genuine. And I don't know if we expected him to know what the hell we were talking about, but he basically was like, okay, like earnestly taking notes, I guess, on the other end of the phone. little do we know, he goes back to the developer and the publisher, and he's like, all right, so blah blah blah, EGM guys are really hoping that the turd eat mode from the original game is in there. And like, I guess it's like alarms started going off like everywhere at the developer, because they're like, what is this mode? Did someone sneak something in that we don't know about? Like it became a thing. So our buddy frantically calls us. He's like, hey guys, like I don't know, like I don't know what's going on here, but we got to get to the bottom of this. It's like, I don't know if we like reply all, like forwarded emails, like we gotta figure this out. And meanwhile, Chris and I are like, oh shit. Like, no, it's just a custom version of horse. It's fine.
I don't remember being able to change the name. That's hilarious.
Yeah, a bunch of people were fired over it, but hey, it was just,
oh wow, it was worth it.
I'm kidding.
Was that your top game you played for your entire time at EGM, Crispin? Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2?
It might be the game I played the most, because I played a lot with Shawn. Like it was even long after the game came out. We would still sit down and play it. It was just something about it. But when Halo came out, we in our office had the capability to do a local area network very easily. So that was also a huge time suck. We had tournaments in the office. We had Tekken tournaments, every new Tekken game that came out. NFL, we had arcade machines in the office, NFL Blitz, Hydro Thunder, because we were so close to Midway. Oh, a surprise guest is here.
Oh,
there's Mike, the co-host's power's back.
Hey guys, I hope I didn't miss anything.
Yeah, we just got started.
So Mike, we were talking about their most played games at EGM, and he said it was Crispin was in the middle of his answer saying it was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
Probably.
I'm sorry to interrupt that there.
That was during the big Extreme Games boom as well, man. That's a cultural touchstone, those games.
They really
well, there was like different puzzle games, like Pokemon Puzzle League. I know people played a lot. There was like everyone had their own kind of tournaments going off on the side.
We used to play a ton of, what was that one game, that puzzle game that we played a ton of? Was it like, we didn't really play Baku Baku. We played
Puzzle
a lot.
Fighter?
We did. Shu played a lot of Puzzle Fighter.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
it's the best puzzle game to me. I think that's better than Tetris. It is the best puzzle game of all time.
I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
To me.
I'm trying to think, what else did we play a ton of? I mean, you mentioned Tekken. That was huge when that came out. Soul Calibur. My God, we used to play.
Yes.
For like
Dan mentioned this.
hours.
Yeah.
We actually, I
saw-
mean, and like some of the lines are blurred about like, you know, what we played during work hours or just at the office generally, or even at home. Like, you know, like for me playing like Castlevania Symphony of the Night, it's just like, you know, I couldn't get enough of that game. I feel like I just played it for hours and hours on end. But in terms of team play outside of console systems, we play like Worms a ton.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah. And it's funny too, Symphony of the Night, because Shawn and I were roommates at the time. So I would be playing the game in my room and he'd be playing the game in his room. Even though we were like in the Melrose Place of video games, because actually a lot of EGM editors lived in our apartment complex.
Okay.
We had some that were right down the hall. John Riccardi, Craig Kujawa, and then we'd all basically just carpool to work. Or you know, it was just like we all worked together and we all basically lived together. And we
just go home for a couple hours to shower and sleep a little, go right back.
Yeah.
Was there a moment when playing Symphony of the Night where you're like, is this like the best game this year? Is this the best game in a long time? Like, I feel like no one really knew until it was already out, right? Like I feel like there was a sleeper hit.
Wasn't everything a sleeper hit then?
I don't know, like Mario and your Zeldas, and I mean there was build up to Resident Evil as well, I remember, and even though it was the first, I don't know, I felt like Symphony of the Night, even though it was part of the Castlevania franchise, we didn't know quite how good it was.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it for me was like it was so chock full of little secrets and Easter eggs and other, you know, I mean, like every other Castlevania game, there's little secret areas you can unlock, but that one was like times 20, you know. And I think part of it is playing it like outside of the incredible bosses and just the general storyline and just the diversity of areas that you can go to. I was pretty convinced. I'm like, oh yeah, this is. I mean, when you start playing a game and you just like literally can't put it down, you can't stop.
Oh yeah,
you know that's a pretty good sign.
Definitely.
I have a friend who flunked out of college for that game.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
we were in that.
It was one of those. We all should have done more to help him, honestly. You know, in hindsight. But like,
play the game, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Try to get him done faster so he could get to his exams. But yeah, he was on this academic probation. He had some issues prior. He was coming from like a homeschooling religious background and had never really just been set loose. And set loose for him ended up being, here's a PlayStation. Would you like to play this Castlevania game?
Rumspringa.
And there it was, man. It was like finals week and stuff. And it was like, you know, you got to go to this exam tomorrow at 10 a.m. He ended up staying up the whole night. And his roommate came in and was like, yo, wait a second. Did you ever go to sleep? And he's like, nah. Did you go to your final? No. And that was that. He never came back.
Did you destroy
it? Good game.
It's the devil's interactive entertainment.
It's totally true. I mean, though, I mean, he's sort of like, I guess, technically doing God's work by destroying demons. No, it's you know, you just don't know. You just don't know where you land with that one.
Yeah, it's that good, that game.
No regrets. The other game that I sunk a lot of time into was Resident Evil 2 when that came out, because it was like such a level up from the first game. Yeah. It had actually a really good like a CG intro as compared to, you know, the live action bad acting intro from Resident Evil 1. But I kind of like
I love that intro.
Yeah,
I like the intro from Resident Evil 1 because it's so like a slice of a window into time. Like it's got like everyone's got like big, like it looks like 80s hair, and they're like shooting dogs that are like spraying out like hydraulic fluid and stuff, and it's just so bad. It's awesome.
It's kind of like when you see those, like if you ever do karaoke where they have videos, you're like, I don't know where this video was recorded, but it's not maybe in the United States.
It's like a Memphis commercial.
Yeah.
I think we
random
might be
videos
able
in the-
to generate those karaoke videos with AI now. Like, I don't think
Oh.
they would be any less effective.
Nice. I want to see that.
Probably those poor actors would be out of work. Those poor Canadian and Australian or wherever.
Oh yeah.
Do you guys feel like there's any game site now that seems like it has an EGM feel at all? Is the EGM spirit living on in some way online and another website, or
I mean,
For what?
that is still a website that is functioning and live, and you know what I mean. Like there was probably a handful that don't exist anymore.
Okay.
for some reason I feel like Kotaku is closest. I feel like it has an EGM vibe to it for some reason.
Yeah, I would say that.
Well,
That's probably,
yeah. When you say like EGM vibe, I'm assuming that's a good thing.
Yes, good thing.
Like a sense of community, like a familiar. You know who's writing, what their tastes are. You kind of get a sense of what they're about, and that there's a certain amount of like it's legit or genuine, I guess. And yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, honestly, I don't really look at many gaming sites now. If anything, I look at YouTube mostly because I'm a writer for games now, and I do a lot of research into like past IPs and things. And honestly, my favorite is like a YouTube gameplay video where the person making the video just shuts up and doesn't talk. So I can just like the no commentary gameplay videos.
No commentary.
So obviously things have changed quite a bit since the time you guys were working on a magazine and living all in that housing together, basically. But what is it that you might look for in a game site today? I know you say you prefer to just see some gameplay directly, but if you were to go to a game site, what are you looking for in that nowadays? What's the role of games journalism now?
That's a great question. I mean, I think for me, one of the things that I always really appreciated about EGM is particularly like the era where Crispin and Shu and I and a handful of others worked there, is that it was very genuine. Like we really truly loved the work that we did and really busted our ass to get that magazine out every month. And I think because of that, there was a level of authenticity, at least from us. I think that you maybe didn't always get from other places. And I think that's kind of what I'm looking for. And then the writer in me is just like, I want a writer who can edit their work and just make sure that it's a bit succinct. Just because you have unlimited pages on the internet doesn't mean you need them.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes it takes too long.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's definitely changed for me. Like I try to think about it. We talked a little bit with Dan Shu about this, but the games journalism was often more of a consumer focus for me. And as much as I like to see, there's a vibe, there's a camaraderie clearly here. I wanted to know, like, should I be buying this game? Is it worth it to me? But there's so many ways to find that out now that I don't really need it the way I used to. So I look for very different things. And I was just curious to hear what a former professionals in that field felt.
Yeah, I mean, when we were in game journalism, it was definitely a different time, a different medium, and just everyone's access to that information was you didn't have a whole lot of outlets for it, and everything's wide open now where you can really just kind of I guess you just have so many outlets now for gaming information, for really any information. It's almost overwhelming. So I've always just loved magazines. Like that's when I was in college, and I would go to the library because I worked in the library, and I would take out. We had bound collections of like Entertainment Weekly or Sports Illustrated. I would pull those out, or GQ, or all these magazines. Pull them out and read them, and I just loved. I like long form kind of features, not super long form, but I like just enough depth. I like to hear quotes from sources. I like to read information from the horse's mouth, from the developers themselves. And if sometimes that's insider information, sometimes it's sanctioned by the publishers, but I like to see something that's fairly in depth. So and you know, I guess that's the kind of stuff I look for is more that kind of like long form, in-depth kind of gaming journalism, which some, you know, it seems like that kind of faded away a while ago, but you can still find it out there.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. It was a different time. It was a little more innocent maybe. And I think that we had more connections to developers back in the day. You know, I know that exists, and certainly that exists in indie games. But I think it's a little different now for some of the AAA or blockbuster titles and publishers. It's very, very gated.
Do you feel like modern games get a little bit too lost in storytelling? Because it feels like games back in the day, it was pure, because you couldn't tell much of a story unless you're playing an RPG. It was just about gameplay only. And now sometimes I feel like they're just video games are trying to be movies so much sometimes that I don't know. I mean, I know it's a natural evolution of gaming, but sometimes it just feels like, is that what video games should be? I don't know. That's just
curious your thoughts on that, Crispin. I have some opinions.
Well, yeah, I mean, I generally skip any kind of in-game cinema. I mean, I think part of it is, you know, we're all like, Shawn's got a family, you know, we're all old now. Our time is limited. The amount of time we have playing games is limited. So
okay, so there's the time to play games. Okay, so thank you. I thought you meant limited.
Shawn, I'll talk to you after this, but I've seen your tests.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I've seen the MRIs.
He's also a doctor.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, you know, our time is so, that's why, you know, people are into mobile games or, you know, more like, you know, real-time strategy games and tower defense games and things like more quick hit experiences. Honestly, my favorite kind of games now are what I call skeleton clickers, which are just Diablo clones that I can play with my partner. We can sit down and play through games and just collect loot. I don't care about the story. The graphics are cool. I like the building of, you know, I like the accumulation of loot and building up my character. And somehow that, as I've gotten older, has become like my favorite genre. Now, like we were saying earlier, if I was just a single dude living on my own, I would definitely have like a full-on space shuttle cockpit and headset, and I would be strapped into flight sims. Because you know, now you can truly live the dream of being like a fighter pilot if you wanted to at home. But I didn't have that when I was younger. So
full experience is wearing a diaper just to make sure that he can stay in as long as possible.
Wearing that, got a diaper
this
on
is
anyway,
awesome.
Man of a certain age. But yeah, I mean, my perspective. I mean, Crispin's right. I have a kiddo. He's 9 years old, and that does, you know, he plays games. He's really into games, and it definitely changes your perspective on like what makes a good game, and just the breadth of different kinds of games. I mean, I used to totally shit on, you know, like the so-called casual games. And now that's most of what I play, and typically with my son, and some of them are real damn good gems. Like Apple Arcade, like people can say what they want, and there's turds in every system, but you know, there's some really fun damn games on there. And then you know, knowing amazing, well, I mean, you can still call them indie games, I guess, but the Undertales of the world and other games that are so widely loved, or for Friday Night Funkin', for Christ's sake, like just like these titles that I don't think I mean, Undertale certainly, but some of these other ones, like I maybe heard of, but just because of the sheer love that my son and his buddies have for it, I'm like, take a closer look and like, damn, this is really well made. Like, this is a cool ass community around it too, you know, and then you know, the same token, I can play games like Breath of the Wild is probably one of my, you know, more modern favorite games of all time. Just an incredible cinematic experience, really damn fun. And I think what that teaches me is like the beauty of games is no different than back in the day, where you have these quick hit whatevers that are just like casual and fun as hell, and you know, wonderful gameplay. And then you have these deep cinematic experiences that are like, holy shit, I'm dedicating a portion of my life to this damn game, and somehow it's okay. But I think that's the beauty of it. You know, gaming can be all those things, and it's totally fine.
I grew up playing mainly fighting games and platformers, so I did, other than EGM, I didn't like to read a whole lot. So RPGs, I didn't grow up playing too much. The only one I played really in earnest was Final Fantasy VII, mainly because at that time, to see those spells, those cinematic spells, was absolutely mind-blowing, and I loved that, and I beat that one, but other than that, not too much. But then when I played Breath of the Wild on Switch, I played for like 5 to 10 hours and then put it down. I got kind of bored like 5 to 10 hours in. 3 months passed by. I go home for Christmas. I put it back in, start playing it, and then I get mercilessly addicted and played it until I beat it. And that was like one of the most kind of moving video game experiences I've ever had. That's the most amount of like most efficient storytelling, like the least amount of cutscenes, kind of least amount of storytelling with the maximum amount of emotional response I feel like I've ever experienced in a video game. And after that, I played, except for Ocarina of Time, I still haven't played that one yet, but I've played all, the Super Nintendo one and some of the DS ones, Game Boy one, all that. I went back and played all that, and I went back and did like this whole RPG thing again and played Chrono Trigger for the first time in earnest and things like that. So honestly, that's like, yeah, that kind of changed my trajectory in my video gaming tastes, I think, was Breath of the Wild. I added RPGs to the mix a little more.
All those all those completist, action platformers, starting with Super Mario 64. I mean, certainly there's plenty before that too, but like the particularly the 3D ones, and then other ones, Castlevania, like we've talked about. But just that, like Breath of the Wild definitely like reminded me of that completist mentality, and where I'm just like, oh no, this is a problem. But here we go. My son and I have already talked about that when the sequel finally comes out, knock on wood, 2023, regardless if it's on Switch or whatever the next system is, I don't care. It's happening. I'm taking the day off work. I'm pulling him out of school. We've already talked about this. It's approved.
Wow.
Yeah, we're going to do it.
Man, I bounced off that game. I just couldn't do it.
Wow, you didn't like it?
No.
Oh,
no, I played quite a bit. And I think that basically at some point I was like, I really wanted to play a Zelda game, and this doesn't feel like Zelda to me. And I stopped. Yeah. And that was it. It was, it wasn't like this is a bad game. It was this is not what I was looking for. I've played something like this. I've played Skyrim, I've played all these other games, but like I wanted the dungeon with the item that is the key to the dungeon with the cool boss designs. And like the 3DS game, what was that called? A Link Between Worlds, or is that right?
Something like that.
Something like that.
Or no?
It was A Link Between Worlds is the name of the 3DS sequel.
Oh god!
To A Link to the Past.
I know. Wand of Gamelon for the 3DO.
That was a Philips CDI, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, you're right, Philips CDI. Sorry.
Did you guys review? You guys reviewed those too, right?
Oh man!
Did you review CDI?
I remember back in the day when like a new Zelda game would come out, you'd always have to do like the Zelda retrospective. So you break out the old CDI, get some terrible screenshots from Wand of Gamelon. And
I gotta tell you, like showing my son that crazy ass shit from back in the day, like he's just like, of course he's a kid, so he's like, oh, it's so cringe, Dad. This like, yeah, it's horrible. It's so bad. Like, let's watch it again.
Like, it was cringe even then, son. And we loved it.
Awkward like animations I do talking to some or to Link.
CDI was hated immediately, I remember. Like I remember you guys, I'm sure it was EGM, was like panned CDI and stuff. Panned CDI like day one.
Isn't that the same guy like who started EA and invented the 3D?
No, that was Trip Hawkins.
Oh, that's right.
That's
Trip Hawkins was on the 3DO.
The CDI had a mean encyclopedia. Had a really good encyclopedia.
That's right.
It had Hotel Mario. That was the only game that was good on it, I think.
Oh,
was it an Eagles Mario mashup? Hotel California.
yeah, that's it. It had the Eagles the whole time. Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking Philadelphia. I was like, what?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Throwing stuff at Santa Claus?
Yeah.
I think we're making our own award-winning game here.
Yeah.
Did you guys feel like you were like kind of famous for a while at all ever?
Working at the magazine?
Well, I mean, you guys are, so I would.
Yeah.
So.
I mean,
so there was the website at the time, Nuke, that Shawn was working at. They did like one of the very early form of video chat that we could interact with fans or readers. So we all went up there and spent like an hour on some kind of like AOL sponsored video chat, and that was kind of cool because a lot of people like knew who we were.
Okay.
And this is like 1996, like
yeah, it was early.
I think we were like in monochrome, but
okay.
We looked like Link from the CDI. That's the
Oh yeah.
Look like Wanda Gamelon.
yeah. I wish.
I now want to play that game, man. Oh man.
I'm not so sure you play it.
I think it's entirely in the realm of possibility that EGM.com was probably the first website I tried to go to as a kid. I'm pretty sure that was the case.
I hope it was on site and not somebody else's.
Yeah, but you guys, it like changed to videogames.com or something. Like you put an EGM and went somewhere else.
It was like, yeah, I feel like there was some sort of weird, like we were kind of becoming or part of GameSpot for a minute.
Oh yeah,
or something, and then eventually One Up was born and kind of spun off.
There was a weird period where like just calling yourself like videogames.com is the most straightforward URL you can have.
Yeah.
But then I think that the marketing people decided that's too straightforward. Like that's maybe when Google came out and like Google it's not just search.com or like Ask Jeeves or whatever we were using back then, or Yahoo search. So then I think they were casting around for a zany name, and I don't know where they got to with that, but
either.
Yeah.
I mean, oh, go ahead.
Oh, just whenever we started transitioning and putting stuff up on videogames.com, we were a little put off on the magazine side just because we were being asked to then reserve content that we were writing for the magazine also for the website. So it was just kind of like not doubling our workload, but adding another 30% to it, to just like, when you're working on a story or a review or whatever, just like holding back what you were going to write for the website also. But I mean, that's pretty first world problem. So I'm not going to complain.
I dodged a lot of that. By that time, I had left the magazine. I was doing a little bit of freelance, but I was kind of transitioning more into like illustration and artwork.
Oh, okay.
But I think like when you talk about the legacy of EGM, and I mean, you all know us from that time, and there's a lot of other folks that they don't know anything about what I'm doing now, but they remember me from EGM, which is the trip. I'm super flattered by that, and it was a special time, so I'll always celebrate the work that we did, and just like the friendships that we developed, which sounds cheesy, but it's true. But yeah, I mean, I think it not being part of the .com era of the magazines was definitely a different experience for me, just because then all of a sudden it's like, not only did they have the EGM print stuff, then all of a sudden they were on podcast or videocast or being interviewed for TV, like Shu was on G4,
right.
And I think because of that, like it just really elevated them to a different level of celebrity.
Okay, that's cool.
We had a weird transition period too, where before really, the website stuff in .com stuff became super crucial to the magazine's success. We would put in CDs with bonus content. So we'd have to produce stuff for that too. That would be like videos or kind of like, proto podcasts and interviews and that kind of thing.
Oh,
so there was a big period where the magazine would ship with a CD
oh my God.
That's right.
PSM magazine had a whole demo disc like every month. That was a big draw.
Demos were big for me.
I think I had the Tony Hawk demo from PSM magazine, and it had like 2 songs, the Primus song and the Superman song. It had no other songs, and we played that all the time, and those songs were stuck in my head for like a year probably.
I mean, I you know, like I probably sound like an old man, but I love that kind of shit because, you know, it's like you didn't have anything, like it wasn't on demand. You know, it's like
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
find some stuff on the internet back then, but I mean, obviously now it's like literally you have access to literally anything you could possibly think of,
Right.
except for maybe like old VHS tapes of Turkish action movies.
And for that, you come to me.
That was something.
Oh, wow.
Then you go to Crispin.
Oh, okay. All right.
We that's one of the things we used to do. We just like
But
order a bunch of like way too much barbecue and just sit there and watch these weird Turkish action films. I don't even know if we got drunk. That's the thing. Just like got drunk on being idiots.
You didn't
The
drink
film
a
will take
lot?
care of you.
Yeah, exactly.
There wasn't a lot of drinking going on at EGM.
not really.
really.
No,
Yeah, not
you think
during
there would be.
deadlines. Yeah.
When Shawn started, he was 20, so he couldn't
Oh,
even make
yeah.
a drink.
That is
Yeah.
true. Okay.
And I was definitely a late bloomer in the way, but the difference is that then when we went to E3,
Oh, I see.
then the gloves came off.
There was 1 year where E3 was in Atlanta, right?
Oh yeah.
That was only 1 year.
2 years?
I thought it was.
And
it
there's
was
a
2
reason.
years.
There's a reason why we never went back. Crispin.
Why?
Crispin Boyer. They decided after that they weren't going to have they weren't allowed to have E3 there. No, I'm kidding.
What did I do? I can't go back to Georgia. I'm just not allowed in that state.
Okay.
That's
All
why
right.
why
If I,
it's like somehow maritime
exactly, yeah.
law.
That must be painful at the end of every movie when that Georgia bit shows up in the credits.
Oh, yeah. Right. The little peach.
I feel like every movie I've ever seen
Yeah.
is filmed in Georgia. Apparently, I don't
There's
know.
like incredibly aggressive subsidies to film in Georgia. Some of those are being rolled back now.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
But, yeah.
A lot going on there.
There's a lot rolling back.
Yeah, good point. A few things have rolled back in the last year.
Were you guys a part of the whole Shen Long fiasco?
Fiasco.
Not fiasco, but the whole, I don't know, what's the wording? That was a big thing with EGM back in the day.
Absolute thing of beauty.
Big thing of beauty.
We were intimately involved in that.
That was art imitating life, imitating art. Because, I
Yeah.
mean, that's like one of the few times a piece of gaming journalism influenced the actual franchise that it
Yeah.
was.
Oh, right.
making fun of.
Right.
But we also, that was, a notorious, famous April Fool's joke, and that was always something we had a lot of fun planning out. We did a famous GoldenEye one where you can play as Sean Connery, but I always liked the ones that were just stupid. And I think my favorite was Game Shorts.
Oh,
There was like some April issue where we did like, let's just do like 20 April Fool's jokes, and one of them was Game Shorts. And it was back when there was like vibrating anything was
vibrated.
popular.
Yeah, everything was like forced feedback or like some sort of like acoustical feedback or some random bullshit.
Yeah, Game Shorts with a Z. You put them on and they would vibrate to whatever you were playing.
Oh, my
So
God. That was a
We
thing?
did get the trans vibrator with Rez. So
Yeah, see,
don't know.
once again, we
I never had
influenced
that.
culture.
And I mean, if people are buying gaming chairs at a premium, why not?
There was the activator for Genesis, which was like some ring you stood in and punched and kicked over it.
Yeah.
Barely worked. It barely worked.
Although if anyone's ever done any of the immersive Oculus games, well, essentially games or game demos, if you will, I've definitely hurt myself on those damn things.
Oh,
It's so fun, but holy shit, it's like you are in it.
Yeah, I went to a demo once because I've never actually had any VR equipment myself, but I saw there were handlers there
Oh,
trying to
nice.
guide people, make sure.
Oh, yeah.
Hold on.
That's
I
when you
got
know you've made it if you can have like hire some VR handlers for your home.
Shawn, are you the only EGM writer that went on to make a game?
No, that's not true because I mean, if you, I may have been like probably one of the first, if not the first, but I think if you look at, technically speaking, John Riccardi and Mark, they helped publish a lot of games through
Okay.
8.4.
Okay.
And I think Undertale and Deltarune are probably two of the most notable.
That's from 8.4. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I mean, if their name's on it, I don't know. I think that's pretty public. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. But yeah, I mean, in terms of original IP, yeah, I believe so. I believe that Ninja Town, it came from me, and they're my characters, so I think so. Yeah, I think from an EGM standpoint, that is true.
Where did Ninja Town come from?
Well, I was, I made. It sounds weird, but I was making plush toys. So after I left the magazine, it was a weird time, and a lot of folks were leaving, and they're going to .com sites. I mean, gamers.com was promising people we'll pay for your child's college education and give you stock options and so on and so forth. And it just, the whole dynamic changed there, and it was just time for me to try something else. So I went back to college. We joke like Rodney Dangerfield, very similar in fact. So I went back to school, and then I was like, you know what? Like I do really, really, really like journalism, and I think that'd be interesting. But I really loved art, and I loved art and visual design and so on. So I actually went back to school for painting to get a fine art degree.
Oh wow! Okay.
And during that time, I was just like making all sorts of random art and weird stuff. And one of those things was like taking my old sketchbooks and then making plush toys out of them. Fast forward to making these little like ninja kind of characters that I had in my sketchbooks, and then just kind of was like, oh well, they need somewhere to live, and I always named my characters pretty straightforward. So I'm like, oh, the ninjas are gonna live in a town, so I called it Ninja Town. That was really it. I mean, straight up, that was it. And
That's awesome, Rob.
Started with the Wii Ninja, and then from there, I was like, all right, well, another pragmatic question was like, well, there has to be other ninjas who live in this town, and then I started populating it, and that was just like plush toys and like basically like not an online comic, but it might as well have been like a little story and drawings and stuff. And then fast forward many years after doing a lot of plush toys and other projects, the designer toys with Kid Robot and that sort of stuff, and then this publisher was looking for original IP, and I pitched it with some friends, and they were like, yeah, this sounds pretty fun. And this one guy's like, oh well, there's this new game called Desktop Tower Defense, and it's like this newer genre. It's like tactics light, blah blah blah, and I was like, oh, that actually could be really cool. So we developed it around that, and the publisher really liked it. And a year of development later, the game came out. Which I didn't think it. I didn't think
good. A year.
It was. I mean, there's probably some pre-development like around like the general genre and sort of how it could play, how like what the mechanic actually was like. But yeah, the development cycle was about a year.
Wow, that's pretty fast. Did you want it to be tower defense, or was that somebody else's decision? Or
no, we talked about a few different genres. That was one of many options. We talked about racing. We talked about a platformer. We talked about all sorts of different possibilities and tweaks to any of those base genres. But it wasn't my idea to do tower defense. But damn, when we started getting into it, I was like, this makes so much damn sense with the characters.
Oh man, I think I discovered with that game that's a genre that I love. I didn't grow up playing tower defense. That might have been more of a PC thing. I was always a console gamer. And man, I'm not just saying this. I really couldn't put it down till I beat it. I think I stayed up, and I probably bought it in America, and then this is when I was teaching. This is how I met Mike. I was teaching English in Japan from 06 to 09, and I know I beat it in like my little Japanese apartment, like in one day or one day and a night or something.
You got it right when it came out, then, because it came out at the end of 08.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just remember playing it in Japan, and I was like, I was really into it.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's a great game.
Yeah, it was a trip. I mean, I loved Final Fantasy Tactics and a lot of those tactics games, Command and Conquer, like resource management.
Oh yeah.
games. I remember like Command and Conquer when that came out. That was or Dune actually first, and then Command and Conquer later. But those resource management, real-time strategy games and tactics games, like there was something about those I just loved. Remember Crispin? Remember what the hell is that one game that is like was it Dragon? What was it called? Where I thought I was the character. I was like, my
oh yeah, I think Dragon Force. Yeah.
A Dragon Force on Saturn. I love that game.
Wonderful game. I loved that game so much. And that was like, it's not a tower defense game, but it definitely has that resource management vibe. And I really identified with one of the characters, and I wrote this review. It was a terrible review. I love the game.
No, not at all.
Got a review of the review, huh?
Yeah, basically it was just like me like saying like I could imagine myself as Veen, you know, leader of an army, you know, the blah blah blah. And Shu especially just like did not let me live that down. Like he just
oh wow, that's funny.
was making fun of me. But anyway, yeah, just like there's something about that genre, like, and like it was fun, it was a little easier to get into, and I thought this really jives with Ninja Town. But holy shit, like some of those later levels are hard as hell.
That's true. Was it
what, there wasn't a sequel, right? Did it not sell well, or how?
I mean, okay, so you know, video games are different now. So by my standards, like it sold 200,000 units worldwide, like roughly.
That's pretty good.
That seems good, right? But I guess it's not good enough.
Yeah.
At what point is a game like, how many do you have to sell? I mean, I know nowadays it's much different, especially with, you know, like, I mean, you could have a game downloaded millions of times, and it's like, oh, that's pretty good, I guess. You know, it's like
I mean, we saw with Square Enix and their ownership of Eidos or whatever, they were talking about 6 million on the Tomb Raider is a real disappointment.
Yeah, like, I'm saying, like, I think you need to refactor your metrics for success,
right?
But in any case, they were like pleased, but not pleased enough to do a sequel. But also bear in mind, it came out in 2008, and that was the start of a horrible financial time.
Right.
Really affected a lot of studios and a lot of publishers, and unfortunately, that was just one of the casualties.
Okay.
We had full disclosure, we had 2 sequels planned.
Oh wow. Okay.
A sequel to the original game, and then there was another bigger game that was like vaguely inspired by WarioWare.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And we developed, I mean, well, we didn't physically program in terms of development, but in terms of the idea and like how it would work, and a lot of the nuts and bolts of that game, both of those games we had worked out.
Yeah, many meetings,
and talked like some renders and ports to Xbox for the sequel, and really cool stuff. But unfortunately, that's the way it goes sometimes.
I think it'd be great on Switch if anybody out there is listening.
Yeah, well, who knows? I would love to have some news at some point on that front, and you know, I think anything is possible, but we'll see.
And the mobile market is such a beast, you know. It's
a real weird market. I mean, I think like if there's always those wonderful games, like indie games, like this is a thing. I mean, it's true for iOS, but it's true for any of the consoles, at least with their online marketplaces. You know, it's the best game no one's ever played. You know what I mean? Like eventually someone might play it, and we see plenty of examples of that, of games blown up that really came from like literally 1 or 2 people. You know, there's so many great examples of that.
Oh yeah, Super Meat Boy and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's still possible, but you're right. It's a lot harder these days to break out and actually get eyes on your stuff.
Yeah,
but I will tell you, I'm working on it. I'm working on some stuff.
Yeah, at least online only, or download only on Switch at least. Come on.
Yeah, the marketplace is so different nowadays. We were talking about this another day, where it's just like, it felt like in those earlier days you could be aware of everything that was coming along, and now you're looking at thousands of releases within a year, whereas back then it was like, okay, well, the complete set of games in North America is like 1,000 for the Super Nintendo or whatever.
Yeah,
it's just, I don't know how anyone's supposed to really compete except to say I will accept my niche audience, and that's that.
It is.
There's probably 300 games total for all across all systems per year or something in the 90s.
I don't know. I'm just throwing out numbers here,
but I know.
Yeah,
I know it's a huge difference now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, a lot of games that are made in earnest, like they really, I don't want to disparage any indie developer or even mid-level developer that really feels like they put their heart and soul into something, and it's just like it's just not a good game.
Right.
But it is, yeah, you're right. It's there right next to every other game that's released. It's like, damn, I can't really like spend even $10 to find out if this is worth it or not, which is also a whole other conversation. Like $15 for like an amazing game. It's like, what? I will gladly give you 40. Like, but it's definitely a race to the bottom.
I mean, do you guys have Switches?
Yeah.
Crispin, you too?
What's that question?
I said, did you have a Switch as well? A Switch?
No, I haven't actually bought a console since, gosh, I don't know, PS3. It's been a while.
Oh,
I've basically just been on PC and mobile. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, like, if you guys have looked at that eShop page and you try to say like, oh, let's go see what's new or like what's top selling. And it's just like, it's like being back in Kmart, when you look through the junk bin and it's like, I
feel the same way.
Like there's just so much.
There's like,
I don't know how to sort through it.
The game art too, the thumbnail art, a lot of it's really bad for a lot of the games, and it kind of, there's a lot of great games being released, but it's just that the page of the store page.
Yeah, it's just so difficult to cut through.
Yeah.
I have no idea, and I just don't.
They for sure remind me of like the budget. Actually, maybe you remember Crispin at Babbitt's. There's like the budget bin of like $9.99 PC games, and it's just the most random weird shit. Probably a virus. I mean, you just don't know what you're getting, but the art very much reminds me of like, oh yeah, my cousin knows Photoshop or whatever, right? Like they just do they do their best, but it just looks
It's
a collection of bee and frog games.
There was one collection of games on PC back in the day. This is early days, like 93, 94 or something. But it had this it was a game with rats or something. And when the rats would get together, literal human sex sounds would play. And my parents were like, what is going on here?
I did not play that game.
I
know what that is.
I'm not Googling that. You
Google early 90s. It was part of a gaming collection, but rat game sex sounds.
Are you sure it wasn't Batman and Robin for the game.com? Because it was Ratman.
It wasn't that one.
Do you guys have like the worst game you reviewed during your tenure at EGM? The biggest stinker of all time?
Probably Bubsy 3D. I think Bubsy 3D.
Tim Rogers has some whole Bubsy video.
I don't think you're going to get a lot of argument against that.
Superman 64 was not good.
No, that was a real buggy. Gem.
That's a painful experience.
I'll have to think on it, but I do remember more than once there are games that are clearly like they sent it to us. Like if we were in the room with the developer and publisher and the PR agency, then the developer is like pleading with them not to send it out yet. Like it's not ready. It's not the gold master. It's just please don't send it to the magazines yet. And they're like, we got to do it. We're gonna send it, and then we get it, and we're like, it's a review copy. Like it is as far as we know, it's ready for us. But it's clearly not ready. It's clearly not done, and it's buggy, and it's not like now where it could be patched. Although, we have plenty of cyberpunkian stories to share on that front too. But it's like that's it, and we have to review it, and like they can beg and plead. But what are we going to do? Like we don't know if this is going to be fixed or not. We can assume. Yeah. But that was rough. Because the developers, like they're they're people too, and
Right.
we're like, we want to do right by them, but we got to do our jobs. It was tricky sometimes.
Yeah. And that's another reason that things are so strange nowadays too, because you see the reviews are meant to come out roughly at the same time as the game, and it's like, well, we all know we're dealing with day one patches, and within the next week, it's a completely different experience.
Yeah.
Street Fighter 5.
Yeah, I mean, I was very happy, because I still play Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. So for me, 16 characters is more than enough, especially when they're distinctly different.
But that one barely had a menu when it first came out.
It's just like, oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. And then, of course, okay, so nobody jumps in. And now the numbers drop off. But all of a sudden, it's a much better game. It
is weird, though, because Crispin, like I don't know if Andrew and Mike, if you play much in the way of PC games in addition to consoles. But, for a long time, PC games, it's like getting patched or downloading updates, no biggie, it's kind of part and parcel. Maybe not so much in the days of like when you had to load 15 3.5-inch floppy disks.
I was gonna say most of my PC gaming actually was in the 80s. I used to play Sierra Adventure games mostly, LucasArts and stuff.
Yeah.
It was in the 90s. I didn't have a computer for a while there, and it was pretty sad. So I used to have to go visit my friends' houses to go play on their computers.
Mine was just StarCraft. That is literally the only, other than the rat fucking game, the only PC game I ever played.
I remember, like, this is going to date me horribly, but I was when I worked at Babbage's, I bought a used computer off my manager. It was like a 46 like, I don't know, I can't remember what the speed was, but regardless, as I opened this thing up and I changed
22 kilohertz.
it was supposed to be 66, but this thing ran like a dog. Like, it was terrible. So I opened it up and I was like looking at these dip switches in the manual, and like I was clear, like I found this dip switch was like on wrong. It was like underclocked. So I switched it, and it was like because I was playing Doom 2 or whatever, and it was like, this sucks. Like, this is supposed to be faster, and then I changed the dip switch, and it was like screaming, and the guy I bought it from was so pissed. He sold me a lemon, dude.
Man.
But I it was just a dip switch, and it was totally fine. And he was pissed because he sold it so cheap.
But, that reminds me of those early days. I think it was when we first went to a 386, and it had like a turbo button to go from 11 megahertz to 22 or something like that. And I remember my grandmother sitting down to play Tetris, and she was like, "What's happening? What's happening? The pieces they're just dropping." And it was all going double speed. And I was like, what are we doing?
Overclocked.
So I had to hit the button, and then all of a sudden it was normal, but it was just one of those funny moments of like, so that's what this does?
It's like the Sega Genesis with blast processing. That's why Sonic.
Why wouldn't you always keep the turbo switch on? That's what I wondered when I saw those things.
And then
exactly.
I found out. It just wouldn't run right.
I think that'll about do it. Mike, you got any final questions?
I'm going to leave it because I don't know what I missed in the earlier portions. So I'm just saying, thank you guys for coming out. I'm sorry I couldn't get here earlier, but my ISP, we had a blackout, and then the blackout was fixed, but the ISP had issues. So that's why I'm joining late.
It happens.
Well, my final question is, will you guys ever reveal who in the fuck sushi-x was?
He's gone.
There you go.
Oh. Crispin's not. Crispin never will.
That's his answer.
I love it.
Unbelievable.
Or
I'll tell you who sushi-x wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't Crispin Shurai.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. So there's something. I really feel like, was this serious? Did he really leave because of this question?
No, maybe he had to go poop.
Okay. All right.
Never seen Crispin and sushi-x in the same room, so I don't know.
That's true, man.
It's true. I don't think I did either. And we lived together, so although there was times when he'd just leave randomly in the middle of the night, so maybe.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Dan, we asked Dan this question. He was like, basically, he said he was going to die without telling anyone. He loves the mystery. I feel like you guys have signed a pact for life. There's a blood oath.
Yeah, it's definitely that kind of vibe. And it's not legal, but I think it's like,
Stronger than legal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It is a blood pact.
Okay. All right.
Any more? Do you have any Decapitato stories before we head out?
Oh yeah, I wish Crispin was still here for this one, but I'll give you the one. I mean, you read it in the magazine, and for those of you out here who don't know, like, it was a frisbee disc, Aerobeat frisbee disc, and we invented this ridiculous game called Decapitato, and how it started was we too would have like brownouts and blackouts in Lombard where our office was, and as you can imagine, it really dramatically affects writing about video games and playing video games.
Yeah.
So there were times that it'd just be down randomly. It'd be a perfectly sunny day outside, but it's just the power would go out, and we had these like emergency lights in the hallways that were very dim. Oh hey,
He's back.
it's Crispin.
I'm back. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
No, I was just telling them about, it's perfect timing actually, because I was just telling them about Decapitato. But also your timing leaving right when they asked about Sushi-x was also amazing.
Yeah, incredible. You vanished like a ninja, so I wonder.
Yeah. So basically the power would go out randomly on a perfectly sunny day in Lombard, and we'd go into the hallway where it was dimly lit, and we'd take this, it would be like 5 to 10 people on each side of this long, essentially dark hallway, and we would just whip this frisbee disc at each other down the hallway, and you had no idea where it was going. You could hear it kind of like it was this like terrifying whistle that was coming. I think Crispin must be having internet issues.
It looks like it, yeah.
But regardless, this thing, you would hear this faint whistle, but it would be too late, and it culminated. And I think it was Crispin who was on the receiving end of this, and I don't know if I threw it or someone else did, but regardless, it hit him in the lip and it broke his lip. Like, it actually.
Oh wow,
man.
So like we're all like younger idiots, and we're like working late hours and having a blast, but like there's times when we're playing it in the morning, but we've been there 2 days without much sleep, So it got real. So then that, like, basically that's where it was born, and then the lore came after that. We like passed it on as this as a game that anyone can play. But it was legit terrifying in that hallway because you could not see like what was going on. It was perfect. The emergency light was in the middle of this long hallway, so you could kind of see it for a second, but it was too late.
When Dan brought that up when we interviewed him, I swear it unlocked a memory I had not thought about in so long, because I would remember the magazine, the general, review crew and everything about that, but I hadn't thought about you guys talking about Decapitato since I was probably 10 or so, 10, 11, 12. It was just so locked away.
And if you knew about it, that means you were obviously a subscriber, because we had a special subscriber section.
Oh yeah,
it was a tear out, and I wrote that.
Oh wow, yeah. I was a long time subscriber.
So I didn't.
Yeah. So you may not. Yeah. If you, and like, we did we even gave you like a frisbee, like a Aerobeat disc you could cut out.
I remember this.
But the story was in the middle of that. So yeah, it was. I wrote the subscriber insert, and with lots of contributions from folks, of course, but just absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, that was one of many things. The other one that when we moved offices, we were gifted an early electric skateboard. I mean, this was a very long time ago. Now you see everyone everywhere with some sort of electric skateboard or unicycle or whatever the hell they're riding on now. But we would set a couch cushion on this electric skateboard, put a helmet on if we could find one, and there was always a random helmet around. And then they'd pile garbage up on one end of this long hallway, like random boxes and garbage cans and you name it. And then we'd go all the way from one end of the office down this narrow corridor between like cubicles and everything, full speed. And this thing went like 20, 30 miles an hour. Like, this is so no bullshit, and just crash into this garbage pile.
Oh my
Well,
god.
only at, late at night, but like it's like, all right, who's next? Like nobody got hurt or
wow.
died. Who's next?
Oh man. Yeah.
Good
I
times,
mean,
huh?
I remember you guys you'd even like, if there was like no good game that month or something, you'd be like, my favorite game, Decapitato or something like that. You'd bring it up kind of randomly sometimes.
Yeah, we definitely tried to develop some lore around it.
yes,
We did legit play it a lot, especially when we were bored at night or if the power went out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm losing that power earlier, and I was thinking about like, well, what am I supposed to do in the meantime? Everything I really like to do is with
Yeah.
electricity.
Well, now you know. Go on Amazon, get an Aerobee Frisbee disc, and just get some friends together and throw it at them as hard as you can.
Yeah.
We need to make a Decapitato league, man. That'd be awesome.
I'm down to sponsor that.
Well, anything else you want to plug, man, before we get out of here?
If people want to look at what I'm up to art-wise, you can check out my Instagram at Shawnimals. Otherwise, you can go to immels.com or, I have art and other fun Ninja Town stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's Shawnimals.com, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, Shawnimals.com or immels.com if you don't want to have as many letters.
Okay, great.
And Shawn is SHAWN, not the SEAN spelling. If everybody, yeah.
Being mostly Irish, my parents went with the phonetic spelling.
The first Shawn I ever met in my life was spelled how your name is spelled in my class. And then when I finally saw the actual Irish spelling, probably from Street Fighter, I was like, "Scene? What is that?" Like I had no idea. I was a kid, but
Yeah.
I'll never understand it.
I grew up with a fair number of Irish names around me, so it's pretty standard.
Well, I guess that's it, man. I wish Crispin was here. It looks like he dropped out from internet issues or power issues, but thanks for coming on. Fucking awesome. Grew up with this, man.
Both. It's amazing.
Fucking loved it, dude. I mean, I was a long time subscriber. Every month, it was like, especially before the internet, this was, waiting, man, whenever we would come home from school. Yeah, when we would come home from school, I looked forward to opening the mailbox every day. Of course, I knew it was only going to come in like one day a month, but and then one of the best memories from my mom was she knew we loved opening up the mailbox so much. My mom drove us home from school. Like she didn't put EGMs in it, but she put in like, I don't know, some extra toys or trinkets just because she knew we were looking forward to it so much.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was just a time, man. It was a great time. So thank you.
Hey, you're very welcome. I appreciate that. I kind of in the same boat where like I couldn't get it. I wasn't a subscriber initially, but then I couldn't get it. I had to go to it wasn't even at the grocery store. It was like at a comic book shop because they happen to have other magazines.
Oh, right.
Get other places, and I just remember getting it. And then, fast forward to the first time I stepped foot in that office, it was just like a complete trip.
Right. Yeah, that must have been incredible. So it was already kind of famous, but by the time you were.
Oh yeah. I
You were
mean,
still
I
on
don't
it.
For a long
know
time.
I don't know what their subscriber base was at that time, but it was a lot of people. Yeah, it was definitely probably tens, if not hundreds of thousands of folks.
I think my first one was the Power. There was I was into Power Rangers at the time, and there was some Power Rangers game coverage or something. And I remember like I learned about Power Rangers games, but there's other games in here as well. So I think that was the start of it.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate it. Yeah, if you guys have any follow-up stuff, just hit me up.
Okay, that's great, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.
Likewise.
Thanks a lot for coming on, man. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
You bet. Can't wait to listen.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, please subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Music.
And if you really liked us, please join us on our Patreon at patreon.com/gaming Gaiden. You can become a member there. We have our $1 tier tip jar that also gets you a shout out on our social media, namely our Instagram page. We'll have a board of names there. And then the $5 tier will get you bonus episodes. And the main show that you've been listening to has been free. This one, again, is $5. And then it'll also be weekly. And the main show is this interview series, as you know. But the Patreon episodes will be just me and Mike. And we will be going over topics and news and things like that. Kind of behind the scenes. Think of it as like the Gaming Gaiden green room in some sense. And we will be using the Patreon fundage towards like things like supporting the podcast itself. Like the hosting is not cheap, for one. Other thing is like we will support our retro gaming habit. If we get enough money from this, when we get enough money from this, I will finally get a Neo Geo CDZ from this endeavor from season 1, hopefully. And Mike,
yeah, if they're never really in stock when I go to look for them, but I'd really like to get hold of a Mister, and hopefully by the time all this can work out, maybe that Sega Saturn core will be running. Play a little Dragon Force on there.
That'd be incredible. Yeah, that might be a season 2 thing for me. But yeah, you see, we're really dedicated. We're lifelong gamers, and we're even using this funding if there's a surplus from the cost of the podcast itself. We'll be just going right back into the habit, man. So
that's what this is
to
all
inform
about.
future episodes.
Yeah, it'll also be used for other content as well. So, check us out, patreon.com/gaminggaiden. And that's it. Thanks for listening. Another great episode. Thanks again for EGM for all the great memories, guys. Loved it. Some of my favorite memories growing up, favorite publication, and I love doing these episodes. And I guess that's it. I'll see you later.
Have a good one.